Let me go ahead and take this opportunity to thank you for being here, but welcome Sheriff Boudreau and Katie Meter to the podium. As a preface, let me start by saying in 2014, we collectively created the Human Trafficking Task Force to tackle what was then the unseen crime of human trafficking. Today, collectively, we're here to announce that the next phase of this battle will soon begin. We have now received the notice of grant funding in the amount of approximately $1.4 million from the Department of Justice and the Office of Victims of Crime and the Bureau of Justice Assistance. These funds are committed to these three local agencies primarily. The Office of the District Attorney is the grant administrator, and I'm proud to say that we are the only District Attorney's office that was awarded the role of grant administrator. There will be a funding awarded to the Tulare County Sheriff's Department, and Sheriff Mike Boudreau will speak to that portion. And also funding to the Family Services of Tulare County, and we have the Director of Family Services, Katie Meter, here as well. Why don't you come on in? Prior to the creation of the Human Trafficking Task Force, there were no cases of human trafficking that were reported nor submitted to our office. Since then, we've already have 14 pending criminal defendants active in the justice system. And shocking, surprising, and tragic, we have over 25 victims of sex trafficking that we are actively prosecuting cases regarding right now. There are many more victims that are in the process of having their cases investigated, and we anticipate more cases coming to our office in the future. I can tell you that all but one of those victims is a minor, and the youngest age of a victim so far is 14 years of age. I'd like to take this opportunity to speak a little bit about what the role of the District Attorney's Office will be in this enhanced collaborative model that we anticipate is going to combat human trafficking. We have a three-pronged role, if you will. First, we are going to be the coordinator with law enforcement agencies and operations countywide and across jurisdictions. What we are seeing being investigated and reporting from law enforcement currently is a sophisticated, fluid trafficking operations where victims are physically moved from location to location, and where these solicitations are occurring on multiple types of social media. It is incumbent that we in law enforcement coordinate strategic investigative activities, and this is where the Office of the District Attorney will operate and assist. The funding is sufficient for us to add another full-time District Attorney investigator to assist. This will enhance our existing task force personnel, which include forensic analysis experts. Funding will also ensure that we continue to lead the efforts in outreach and public education. This enhanced model is essential to finding human trafficking rings and preventing children and other vulnerable victims from ever becoming enslaved. Our efforts also included post-certified training with law enforcement officers. To date, we've trained over 125 law enforcement officers around the area. Our goal is to reach out and train every officer in this area of operations. Funding will continue to victim assistance and support programs, and I think it's only appropriate to say that the majority of funding will be dedicated in these efforts. This model will ensure that victims' needs are met, and they will be supported not only from the moment they're rescued by law enforcement personnel in the field, but it will continue through their journey, through recovery and safety, and that is why we are so happy that we have partnered with and have family services available for these victims to continue down that journey, and I'll let Katie Meter speak to their efforts. We're excited to be in this role. As many of my staff will tell you, this has been a personal goal of ours for quite a while. We've been building towards this very moment through training our internal personnel. We now have a state-recognized subject matter expert investigator on our staff. She is post-certified to do that training for law enforcement. We've been successful not only because of the commitment but of our Board of Supervisors in the county to do this out of our existing budget. But make no mistake, we've been successful because of our partners in law enforcement and the efforts in which they have done, and our community leaders who have stepped up to make sure that these victims are taken care of. Victims should know that they are not alone in this journey, And to those that would enslave these vulnerable victims, we are coming for you. Next, I'd like to introduce Sheriff Mike Boudreau. As a partner to combat human trafficking and to track down these sophisticated criminals, we could ask for no better partner than our Sheriff's Department. Make no mistake, the men and women of his department will be the tip of the spear in these sophisticated investigations. They've proven themselves capable, and I'm excited to be along with them in this partnership and in the next phase. And with that, Sheriff Mike Boudreau.
Well, thank you very much to the District Attorney's Office. Thank you, Tim Ward. We truly appreciate the collaborative work that we all do together. I want to as well thank Family Services. Katie Meter will be up here speaking momentarily. For law enforcement, this is very exciting for us. Resources are few and far between. The money to be able to support investigations is limited. But with this grant, this will give the Sheriff's Office of Tulare County one additional full-time detective focusing on human trafficking cases. The efforts that we have made in the Sheriff's Office, even as of most recently, with human trafficking, only proves that it does exist. The most difficult thing for law enforcement is to be able to interview witnesses, victims, in cases where they are intimidated to even come forward to speak with law enforcement to discuss the subject matter. Our detective will be working full-time along with our other investigative units in an effort to have community outreach, to make sure that we train our people and to get with those within our community, which we are doing so now in the Sheriff's Office. But most importantly, what this does is it brings all of us together. Not only the District Attorney's Office, our Family Services, us as a county whole, but our community. The efforts to get to our community to make sure that they are aware that this actually exists. We have victims who are afraid to come forward, but as partners, if we can begin to push down the wall of silence in an effort to bring forth those people who are truly victims of human trafficking, we want the community to be aware that we are there for you and that we are doing everything that we can in this county to make sure that you have resources available to you. And for those of you who have been victims of human trafficking, that we, as the Sheriff's Office, will be the head of that spear to strike into the heart of those who are abusing people, extorting people, and putting them in positions that human beings should not be put into. I'm very thankful to Tim Ward, our District Attorney, as well as the Family Services of Tulare County. We are happy to say that we are only one of 2 Sheriff's Offices in the state of California that have been awarded this money. We will use it. We will not take it lightly. We will put it to good use. And do whatever we can to bring attention to this subject matter. So thank you very much for being here, because just with the media being here, that information will go widespread to the citizens of Tulare County. With that, I would very much like to introduce the Executive Director of Family Services of Tulare County, Katie Meter. Katie?
Thank you. Not as polished as these guys here. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm Katie Meter, Executive Director at Family Services of Tulare County. Family Services is a nonprofit organization that has been serving survivors of violence in Tulare County for over 30 years. Our agency created the first emergency domestic violence shelter in Tulare County, took over operation of the Rape Crisis Center in 1992, and over the past 6 years, we've been working to raise awareness and serve victims of human trafficking in our community. We are so proud to stand alongside the Office of the District Attorney and the Tulare County Sheriff's Office to address the critical issue of human trafficking so that all victims of violence in Tulare County have access to justice and also receive the support that they deserve in healing. We are truly grateful for the confidence that the Federal Office on Victims of Crime has shown in our work, giving us an opportunity to bring this highly competitive project to our community. Together, we seek to strengthen the Tulare County Human Trafficking Task Force so that no victims remain hidden in the shadows. Family Services' role will be to offer highly specialized care for each victim, including case management, advocacy, and trauma-informed counseling. We will also partner with other service providers to ensure that victims have access to safe housing, comprehensive legal services, emergency medical and dental care, substance abuse recovery services, and employment support so that they can truly break free. We believe these victims will represent diverse backgrounds, including U.S. citizens, foreign nationals, men and women, and as recent events have demonstrated, our children as well. It takes true collaboration in all parts of our system to make long-term sustainable change possible. We are ready to take the next steps in this important work, not just to serve each individual victim, but to end human trafficking in Tulare County for future generations. Thank you.
In closing, I would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to express my appreciation for the concerted effort, not only of our grant and program administrator, Ms. Darlene Tyndall, but really the staff of the Sheriff's Department and Family Services. Without their support and input and help, we would not be here today. And these victims, and I promise you there will be more coming down the road, would not be able to receive the service and the support that they're going to get now. We are proud of the synergistic efforts of our partners in law enforcement. There were only 11 agencies awarded funding nationwide, and the sheriff is absolutely true. He is the only sheriff's department in the San Joaquin Valley. In fact, ours is the only task force in the valley to receive funding. We're proud of that, but we're going to be more proud of the good work we do, because I promise you there'll be victims coming in tomorrow. And our county and our law enforcement community is a better place because of this grant award. So with that, I'll close and answer any questions or refer them to Mike or Katie.
Did you guys apply for this sort of grant, or how did the money come up to Tulare County?
Yes, in 2015, we applied for the grant funding. It was a collaborative effort between our three departments.
Can you just elaborate on human trafficking in San Joaquin Valley? It's pretty big here, right?
I'll let Sheriff.
Well, it's difficult to put a number on something that you can't collect data on. We know that it exists. Part of the efforts that we'll see here today is that we want to get the word out, for one, that people have somewhere to go, that we have law enforcement, family services, district attorney's office in this group that is reaching out to the community as a whole. Again, when you say is it big here, my gut feeling from most even recent investigations is that it exists, the level of which is hard to put a number on. But I can tell you that it does exist. I can tell you that even from personal experiences and being in patrol during my day, that it existed even back then. But what we are seeing, as the district attorney touched on, it's even more widespread with social media. You're able to reach out more. You're able to extort different things through social media. Some of the experiences that we got into, even with most recent cases, is that the exploitation or the fear of embarrassment based on revealing personal experiences or photographs through the social media website induce such fear upon people they would never come forward. And so, again, I may be getting too far into the roots to see the flower of your question, but basically we know that it exists. The magnitude of which, again, is very difficult to put a finger on.
Hey, sometimes we do these stories, on a situation, and we may ask police or the sheriff's office, hey, this sounds like human trafficking, is it or not? And we often hear, we didn't really get to that point, or there wasn't enough evidence maybe, or things along those lines. So will this help maybe bring that investigation further, allow it to go further and actually prove whether or not something is trafficking?
If I may, what we hope that this collaborative work is going to do is kind of threefold. One, we're going to be in a position to get more coordinated law enforcement investigations countywide, and we're already seeing cases that cross jurisdiction into our surrounding counties. So we're going to have a better concerted effort with all law enforcement, and especially with another dedicated detective from our Sheriff's Department, because if you see in the last recent few months, the work that they've been able to do, when you talk about the number of cases, prior to the creation of the task force, there were none, and we already have over more than 25 victims, most of which are minors. So that is success, but we're not going to rest on that success. So the more dedicated law enforcement personnel we have in the field to conduct those investigations, yes, the answer to your question is we think we will have more cases coming in. But they're not, those cases don't end with just simply the filing of criminal charges. Yes, there is justice to be handed down to those offenders, but why we're happy that Family Services is involved. The primary focus here, in no small words, are the victims out there. As Sheriff said, we've got to get word to the victims, let them know that they're not alone, that there is help out there. But once we identify those victims, we've got to make sure that they've got long-term services. We don't want to have a relationship with the victim end at the time a criminal case is concluded. And that's why the staff that Katie Meter's got, they're going to have a long-term effect on the recovery of these victims.
I just want to make sure DA's office gets an investigator, and so does the sheriff's office, right? And then,
Correct.
okay.
And Katie, would you like to talk about the funding that you're,
Sure.
some of the ways?
And I would say too, something that we've seen definitely in cases of human trafficking, if someone has experienced, say, an unrelated sexual assault, it's fairly easy to identify yourself as a victim of sexual assault. You know what's occurred. With victims of human trafficking, they don't always identify themselves as a victim of human trafficking. So it's our hope that partnering these criminal justice services and investigations alongside support for victims will help them to better identify their circumstances, which ultimately will better impact investigations and prosecutions. So it's really important that we have both sides of the same coin here, so that victims can also see sort of how the system defines them if they're not defining themselves in that way. So at Family Services, we will also get a full-time victim advocate who will coordinate all of our human trafficking support efforts and also do case management, connecting victims to the comprehensive services. We'll also be providing ongoing therapy. Our hope is to have that in a multilingual capacity so that we can start to reach out some different populations, and that'll be education and support not just to victims, but what we're seeing right now is also a lot of significant others, so parents, grandparents, foster parents, significant others who may not have known that their loved one was involved in a trafficking situation, who also need support. Especially parents, I would say, of minor victims need to know how to parent a child who's had this experience, how to best support them, because there is definitely an ongoing relationship with traffickers that we would like to also break through some of those dynamics. Other questions?
Any other questions? Well then, again, on behalf of Family Services, our good Sheriff's Department, and the men and women in the Office of the District Attorney, thank you for coming. Press packets are available in the back of the room. Please get one. And like was mentioned before, we will have staff available in the Spanish language if needed. So thank you again for coming.